The NHS reports over the weekend suggest that the NHS has paid more than £1 billion in the last 6 years to law firms fighting clinical negligence claims. The figures show one in every £4 the NHS pays to settle clinical negligence goes to the law firms. Joining me now in the studio to discuss this is John O'Connell from the TaxPayers Alliance. He's just told me in the break he's given up watching the match tonight to be here. Apparently that's quite a big deal for you, so I appreciate it. John, tell us about this story.
Yeah, well, over the last 6 years, there's been just over £3 billion paid out in damages to people who make clinical negligence claims against the NHS. Over £1 billion has also gone on lawyers' fees. So there's a two-ended problem here. One is that there's mistakes being made in the first place and patients being put in harm's way, which is obviously something that needs to be eradicated. But also there seems to be a hell of a lot of money being paid out to lawyers in legal fees. So there was one instance a few years ago where the recipient, the claimant of a claim, received only £1,000 in damages, and the lawyers received £83,000 in damages. So you can sort of see in the individual
damages
cases.
Or fees?
In fees. To the lawyers, and it was £1,000 in damages. So you can see in the specific examples that there's a big difference in the amount that's going out in legal fees in some cases and in damages to the people who've actually been affected by it.
And what's at the heart of this? Is it the so-called ambulance chasing culture? What's driving it?
There might be a bit of that. I mean, if you are on the end of a wrongdoing in the NHS, you obviously do want some decent legal advice to make sure that you're not sort of tripped up by the processes. But at the same time, when you've got £1,000 in damages, £83,000 in legal fees, you can see something's going very wrong. And in fact, the NHS Resolution, the body that deals with this, in their own accounts, they say that they've got provisional liabilities of £83 billion for claims that they think will be made in the future. So that's £83 billion. That's a huge number.
So remind me, so £83 billion what, to be paid out in terms of damages, or is that for lawyers' fees, or is that a mixture of the two?
It's a mixture of the two, and it's what the NHS Resolution feel that would be the value of the claims that are currently in train, that haven't been settled yet, and what they think is going to come up in the future. But that's an extraordinary future bill for taxpayers, £83 billion.
It's a huge amount.
Yeah, huge amount.
Why is this? Is this, I mean, I'm assuming, is this increasing, this figure, from what it was?
Yeah, the figure seems to go up every year. It's trickling up.
Why is that? Is there more negligence? Is there more people that sit there and go, I know what I'm going to do, I'm going to sue? Is it a bit of both?
I think it's a mixture of those factors. I think the NHS is treating more and more people. As a country becomes richer, people tend to spend more of their time and concern on healthcare. So the NHS is treating more people, so accidents are going to happen. We have to remember that. This figure could probably never be zero, but at the same time, there might be a bit of a creeping of a sort of an Americanization of our culture where, somebody has to be blamed and somebody has to be hit for lots and lots of money, and it tends to be lawyers that win out in those situations and taxpayers that lose out.
Yeah, because, I mean, you see these adverts everywhere now, don't they? Have you had an accident here or an accident there? And people are really incentivised to get in contact with these lawyers. And is there not such a thing in terms of a cap within the NHS of fees that they would actually be willing to pay? Obviously, if something's going to rumble on and on, it's very different. But in terms of rates, legal fee rates, is there any caps?
Well, ministers a few years ago set these plans in motion. Jeremy Hunt was in charge of the Department of Health at the time, and it was for cases that were of damages of £25,000 or less, so what they call sort of small claims almost. So they wanted to introduce a cap on those, and plans were put in place. I don't think they've quite been enacted just yet, but they're certainly in place to put a cap on the smaller cases to eradicate some of the the things I was just mentioning about 1,000 to 83,000. That ratio is just completely off. So caps on the smaller cases is something the government have already set in motion, really.
But how I find that staggering. So £83,000 worth of legal fees, resulting in £1,000 worth of damages to the patient, presumably. How is that even allowed to get through the books? Why isn't that stopped? And it's just, I find that mind-blowing.
It must have been a complicated case, but I think that's exactly what ministers were trying to eradicate by coming up with their plan to cap legal fees below damages claims of £25,000 or less. That was in 2017, so we're 4 years later. So hopefully it's one for Sajid Javid, the new health secretary. Hopefully it's one for his intro.
And do you think that they will pick this up? Because wasting of money, the thing is, when you're in the public sector, not everybody, before you start getting in touch and having a go at me, but often people in the public sector, they don't value the money as though it was their own money. They do spend it or waste it in a way that I really don't think that they should be. So do you think this is something that the government will get on top of?
With liabilities of over £80 billion, they ought to. It's a hell of a lot of money. We want to deliver more for less money. We want to make sure that the NHS is delivering world-class healthcare. These are the kind of bills that need to be tackled to ensure that money goes to frontline services, to nurses, to doctors, and instead of on negligence claims.
Yeah, because it's staggering, isn't it? We talk about nurses and doctors' pay rises, particularly, we've just done all this clapping for them and, disputing the percentage that these people are going to get. So then when you hear the amount of money that's ring-fenced for predominantly legal fees, it is a little bit... If I was a nurse, which my mum and sister are, by the way, my mum and sister are both NHS nurses, but I think if I was hearing those kind of figures whilst simultaneously hearing arguments and dispute about how much of a pay rise you're going to get for working incredibly hard during this pandemic, then it's a little bit hard to swallow, isn't it? It
is. I mean, of course, you want your mistakes to be eradicated to start with, not just for the money side of it, but just so people don't go through that kind of trauma. But, that's never going to be... They treat so many patients, mistakes will unfortunately happen on occasion. We just need to make sure that the costs for those mistakes are not so sky high that they leave taxpayers shortchanged.
Indeed. Well, that's John O'Connell, Taxpayers Alliance. You've just said to me you're excited because whilst you've missed a game to be here, you're going to the next one.
France-Switzerland.
France-Switzerland, you see. I should know this. I should know all the fixtures, but I don't. I'm trying hard. Well, enjoy the game and thank you very much for your time.